Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable's Organizational Self-Assessment Tool webinar. My name is Samina Zaberi, and I am Header's coordinator, and I want to thank everyone for joining today. This webinar is meant to be an introductory video to walk you through the organizational self-assessment tool and how to use it within your workplaces to support organizational capacity building and to develop and advance your internal equity, diversity, and inclusion practices, policies, and services. So let's get started. I want to begin by providing a very brief overview about HEDR. The Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable is a collaborative of human service organizations, institutions, businesses, community groups, and individual community members across Halton. The Roundtable currently has an active network of over 65 organizational partners and the allies required to advance equity practices and inclusion in Halton. As a collective in the community, we offer opportunities for networking, knowledge and information sharing. We also coordinate and provide workshops and trainings on a variety of different topics. We develop and share resources that support organizational capacity building, and we also conduct local community engagement initiatives and advocacy. Overall, the work of HEDR is very intentional and grassroots. So through the roundtable, we're actually building dialogue and awareness to understand inequities and challenges experienced within our communities with the goal of influencing positive action and the inclusion of all diverse community members and groups. As a community, we all want to come together and do the best for who we serve, and we recognize more needs to be done within our workplaces and services and society as a whole to address systemic issues and begin to repair them. I want to acknowledge all members of the roundtable who are key service providers and play an important role to be collaborative in our efforts and support the work towards institutionalizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. This webinar is specifically designed to introduce you to one of the resources called the Organizational Self-Assessment Tool, which HEDR's very own resources working group developed in order to assist organizations and the individuals within an organization in the progressive journey towards diversity and inclusivity. The Organizational Self-Assessment Tool is essentially a capacity building resource developed for organizations to evaluate their internal equity, diversity, and inclusion practices, identify strengths and areas for improvement in order to aid in developing a more diverse and inclusionary workplace. The tool is intended to be useful for organizations that have very little experience addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and also to organizations that have been working actively on these issues for many years. Who can this tool be used by? This tool can be used by anyone, whether it's leaders, board members, business owners, staff members, volunteers, or essentially any individual with knowledge of an organization. When completing the tool, it is important to remember that the focus is on how an organization is doing as a whole. Why should organizations use the self-assessment tool? This tool is meant to help organizations of all types, private, public, nonprofit, government, or volunteer-driven, to meet the needs of diverse communities. Given increasing diversity in Halton, this tool is one mechanism that can help organizations become more responsive to community needs. The tool helps to identify an organization's successes and potential gaps within its practices, policies, and services while aiding in developing a more inclusionary workplace. The tool can be used in several ways. You can complete the tool in a group dynamic to stimulate discussion on the organization's structures, policies, practices, or assumptions relating to diversity and inclusivity. You can use the tool by having various members of staff fill it out individually, then have a designated leader or staff member synthesize the data for group discussion. This tool can be used during staff meetings, for strategic planning, anything that is HR related, departmental meetings, or diversity inclusion committees, just to name a few examples. The discussion can simply be around what do you hope to achieve and how to set reasonable timelines and goals. Essentially, the organizational self assessment tool is meant to facilitate reflective conversations around how we are doing and what we could be doing, and springboard assessment conversations towards meaningful and continuous action, which will constantly evolve and change as the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion develops over time. Let's walk you through where to find and access the self-assessment tool document itself and other resources, including the organizational self-assessment tools training modules and a facilitator's guide. To access the tool, you will scroll down and click on the tab here that says Download the Self-Assessment Tool. You will then see a Word file, which is the actual document for the tool itself. Simply click on this to access the tool. It is very easy and simple to follow. On the first page, here it includes information about the columns, which are the indicators, evidence, actions planned, scoring, and the 6 areas of self-assessment. And here is where you will fill out the tool. The first section is for organizational foundations, as you can see, which lists multiple indicators. Next is the section for leadership, with its indicators listed. And this format is for each of the sections of the tool. Just another reminder that not all sections or indicators within a section would apply to your organization and the work you do, so you can focus on the relevant section. Next, we have the online modules regarding the organizational self-assessment tool for equity, diversity, and inclusion. To access these modules, simply scroll down and go to the bottom of the page and fill in this form, and this will take you to all of the 8 modules in this series. You can use these videos in any order that makes sense for your organization. We recommend starting with number 1, and then you can focus on the content area from the tool in videos 3 to 8 that you wish to work on. Modules 1 and 2 are introductory videos that provide some basic equity and inclusion learning, along with an overview of the series of the 8 modules and how to use the organizational self-assessment tool for equity and inclusion. Now, let's take a look on how to access the facilitator's guide. To access the facilitator's guide, you simply have to go back to this page, and where you see the various tabs, you just click on Facilitator's Guide, and you will see a PDF, which you will then open, and it will take you to this document. This guide is a detailed document to help you facilitate and implement the organizational self-assessment tool on your own within your workplaces. It includes guidelines such as facilitation tips to help you set the space before beginning the process, and takes you through each of the 8 modules in the video series for the organizational self-assessment tool with timestamps to make it easy and convenient for you to self-facilitate the discussions and begin doing the work on advancing equity and inclusion in your organizations. The organizational self-assessment tool has 6 categories of assessment. Each category has a module associated with it along with the facilitator's guide. Each category focuses on a different aspect of managing an organization. The first category is organizational foundation. This category focuses on the way your organization is structured and operates. The second category is leadership. This addresses formal and informal leaders and leadership strategies in your organization. Next, we have service delivery. This focuses on how your programs and services best meet the diverse needs of stakeholders through input, accessibility, and barrier removal. The fourth category is personnel practices. This involves outreach, hiring, and employee accommodations. Number 5 is communication. This involves data, messaging, and public relations. And finally, number 6 is performance improvement. This involves tracking, reporting, and accountability systems in your organization. Now let's get into the format of what the organizational self-assessment tool looks like. The tool format includes columns for indicators, evidence, actions planned, and scoring. Each of the 6 categories that were mentioned has a set of indicators, and each category has a corresponding module which focuses on the indicators in the tool. For example, the module on organizational foundations, which is the first category or section, focuses on the first set of indicators in the tool under the area of organizational foundations. Each video provides you with the indicators and examples of evidences. So let's take a look at the first column, which lists the indicators. These are the questions we ask in our conversations and dialogue about continuous improvement and that help to assess the extent to which organizational policies, procedures, and practices are diverse and inclusive. We want to note that not all indicators apply to every organization or group, and additional relevant indicators that arise in dialogue should be added. The next column is evidence. Appropriate sources of evidence appear in many ways throughout an organization and reveal how an organization is performing or addressing the various indicators. Evidence proves that the work is being done and reduces individual subjectivity. Evidence is provided to support the score given to the indicator. Identifying appropriate sources of evidence is an important part of completing the self-assessment tool. Examples of evidence are given in the online organizational self-assessment tool training modules. Next column is the actions planned column. These are strategies and next steps to either improve or maintain the score in certain areas. Finally, we have the column for scoring. This is a snapshot of how we're doing in response to the indicator, evidence, and actions planned. You may provide a score to determine where the organization is at on each or some of the indicators that apply to your organization. The organization can rate the extent to which it complies with a series of concrete indicators that reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion promising practices using a scale from 1 to 3. It's important to note that there is no failing score. Creating ongoing awareness of actions for improvement is the true measure of success. When it comes to scoring, it is also important to note that the tool is not meant to feel competitive in any way, in that high scores are the only objective. That is not the case. Additionally, a high score does not mean that equity and inclusion work is finished. This tool is not an exhaustive checklist, and it will constantly evolve and change as the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion develops over time and our learning journeys progress. What are some of the next steps you can take? You can start to utilize the organizational self-assessment tool to implement equitable and inclusive practices. We encourage you to provide us with feedback on your use of the tool, its efficiency, and how it has helped your organization. Your feedback is always appreciated, and it also gives us a chance to evaluate its effectiveness and make improvements. This brings us to the end of the webinar. We hope this is helpful to help you better understand what the purpose of the organizational self-assessment tool is, how to use it, and to get you started on assessing your own internal diversity and inclusion practices.